Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. I am MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite 5-year anniversary show. But of course, we got to talk about the AEW renewal deal. We're going to discuss that first, and then we'll get on with the rest of the show. So, it was announced earlier today on October the 2nd. AEW signed a new renewal deal. Now, I read a couple of articles on it, trying to get a sense of what was going on here, because the official memo was very, very scant on the details that we actually want to know, such as how long it is and how much money it is. Almost neither one of those things were in the renewal memo that Warner Bros. Discovery put out. But Variety did an article on it. This was passed around before the memo came out, and it says that the deal was valued at upwards of $150 million. Okay, but also said that the financial terms were not disclosed. Then said that AEW programs will air live on Max simultaneously for those in the U.S., and it will be on demand in January 2025. That's very good. It said AEW live pay-per-views will be available on Max at a discounted price later in the year. Okay, so the Warner Bros. Discovery memo just says it's a multi-year deal and that Warner Bros. Discovery is the exclusive home of Dynamite and Collision. Now, Sports Business Journal and Dave Meltzer went out there trying to find some details. So, Sports Business Journal says that the deal is 3 years with an option of a fourth, and it's $170 million per year, and that Warner Bros. Discovery will keep their stake in AEW. Now, Fightful has decided that part was in dispute, that neither AEW nor Warner Bros. Discovery will confirm that Warner Bros. Owns a stake or an equity stake in AEW, though many of us believe that they do, and it would be smart business if they did. Now, Meltzer, of course, says that the deal is for 3 years with an option of the 4th year. So that's what we know about the deal thus far. It's a very good deal for AEW. If it's a $170 million deal, as Sports Business Journal says, then it's a $510 million guaranteed deal. That would be for the 3 years. It will be $680 million with the 4th year. That's good. Regardless of, where they were in the past, this seems to be a big increase from that, so this is good. The idea, however, that they will run their pay-per-views later in the year at a discounted price, that screams upcharge to me. It's like, why not just have it on Max? And the question is, it's almost the exact same deal as they had with Fight. Like, you could always go back on the library on Fight and order old pay-per-views for a discounted price. They're just bringing that same thing over to Max. It's like, okay, I guess. Now, there's some talk about the actual library, the full library of Dynamites, Collisions, and Rampages, etc. And I didn't see anywhere that stuff will be uploaded fully onto Max. I have not seen that. Some people have claimed that it will be. I know that Dynamite and Collision will be. They will be available on demand on Max beginning next year. But does that include the entire library? That means Dynamite from episode 1. I do not know, and I cannot say for sure. So, ultimately, it's a really good deal for AEW. They get to stay where they are. They don't get to change that much. They get to entrench more with Warner Bros. Discovery. It's growth. They're making more money. So, hopefully, they can actually turn a profit now. But here's some original thoughts that came out of my head, even though they're not really all that original. One, Rampage is dead. Rampage is not mentioned anywhere in these documents. They talk specifically about Collision and Dynamite. They don't really talk about Rampage. That tells me that they don't really want Rampage. Rampage is finished. Now, could that mean that they could take Rampage and go somewhere else? I don't know. But Rampage is completely dead from what it looks like it. I'm very concerned about why they would be so vague on the financial details, which they didn't release last time, and why they wouldn't tell you how long it was. That seems very suspicious to me, is that they wouldn't tell you how long the deal is. That part, why is that I mean, the money, sure, people might speculate too much on the money, but the length of the contract, you can't even tell us what the length of this contract is. I don't like that. The upcharge for the pay-per-views, I think, is completely unnecessary, and I think it takes advantage of the AEW fans because it's per event. WWE gives you their full library for whatever the charge is for Peacock. You're talking about 60 years, and then you take into account WCW and ECW, and when they were doing it on the network, it was $9.99 just by itself. But now they're with Peacock, it's what, man, $15? I don't even pay attention. It's maybe $12 or something like that. And now AEW is saying, well, you have to pay a la carte for our stuff. Why can't you just pay a fee and get all the events? To me, that seems to be better business. But it seems like, and I hate to put it this way because it's going to sound like I'm a hater, but it seems like they want to take advantage of the smaller number of fans that they have. So they're going to make you... Now, I do question, if you buy that event on Max, do you have to keep buying it? Or is it like once you unlock it, you've unlocked it? That's going to be an interesting piece of business that I really need to know. But upcharging for the events, to me, seems kind of scammy. And also, the event's going to be later in the year. So we don't know. It might be a month late, 2 months late, 90 days late, or whatever. I get it. You don't want it to compete with the actual pay-per-view. And that's fine. That's sensible. But why not full integration? That would be the question I would have about the deal is, could they not get full integration? Why couldn't they get full integration? Why can't just everything be on Max? What's the problem here that they didn't want to give them the full Monty? I would question that. But other than that, the deal's fine. Everybody's hair can stop, falling out now. AEW is secure, which most of us knew it would be in the first place. It's one of the highest rated shows for TBS and TNT, even though the ratings have gone down, even though the ratings are not strong. It's appointment viewing for a healthy number of people. There's growth potential there. Now, Tony Khan has to fix the business end. He's got to fill the buildings up. He's got to get the creative together. He's got to get the roster together. These are the things that he has to do in order to turn the magical profit. Because I'm not sure if he's going to make a profit off this. Maybe he can. Maybe he's going to be able to make a profit off $170 million a year with this deal. But I'm also thinking about what's the split in terms of the pay-per-view buys. If you buy a pay-per-view through Max, how much of that goes to AEW versus how much of it goes to Max? Or does it all go to Max? I don't know. So that's a very interesting piece of business. So I expect AEW supporters to be thrilled about this. They're going to be very excited. They're going to breathe a sigh of relief. A guaranteed $510 million. That's a really good deal for them. My question, of course, is going to be, is this just going to have Tony Khan increase his spending? That would be my question, is, are you going to just increase spending? And also, is Rampage going to go somewhere else? And then there was some chatter. Swerve Strickland made a comment about, AEW going to Fox. He's just jaw-jacking in public. Who knows whether this is actually happening or not. And is it possible that Rampage does get picked up by a Fox Sports 1 or an FXX or something like that? It's entirely possible. I wouldn't put any money on it, but it's possible. So it looks fine as far as I'm concerned. It's a big upswing from what they were making before. The brand is at least secure for the next 3 years, but we'll be back in this situation in 3 or 4 years as we try to figure out, whether they should get more money or not. But I would think that if you're an AEW fan, you're happy with this. If you're Tony Khan, you're happy with this because at least now you have the security that Warner Brothers Discovery is not going to boot you off for a while. The idea that this would be canceled is highly unlikely. It is very unlikely that AEW was going to get canceled before the end of this 3 years. I'm pretty sure there is some kind of out clause on the contract, but I don't expect Warner Brothers Discovery to actually use it unless they have to. And plus, since I think they own a piece of the company, even though nobody will confirm that, I don't see them getting rid of it anyway. The show is consistent when it comes to people actually watching it. It might not be a lot of people watching it, but enough people will watch it. Now, if you're Warner Brothers Discovery, you want to consider certain things like maybe the Nielsen ratings the day of not mattering as much, considering now people can just air the program on Max. And they may want more people to watch it on Max because that means that you have Max. So you may not care too much about the Nielsen ratings anymore. Now, this conversation is going to continue forevermore because they're still on cable. But the idea that AEW is now streaming simultaneously on Max beginning in January 2025, that means that the TV ratings are not that important anymore. Because if it goes down to 200,000 people watching it on TNT or TBS, and then you find out that 500,000 people were watching it on Max, then Warner Bros. Discovery figures that's a good deal. It's a good trade. Because Max is a money loser, like all streaming services are. They would probably prefer people to watch it on Max. And I'm pretty sure if you're AEW, you might want to prefer people to watch it on Max because you might be able to do more on Max in terms of cursing and blood and stuff like that. But that's, details that I don't have the information for. So, again, really good deal. This is finally over for the most part. I don't like all the vagueness, but then again, it's more the same from AEW. They celebrate without any details, without telling you anything. They celebrate about, pay-per-view buys without telling you what the buys are. They, they celebrate about attendance while kind of nudging and fudging what the attendance actually is. But now the fans can focus mostly on the in-ring stuff, which is what they care about. In 2025, however, we will be definitely having some real conversations about the TV ratings because they're going to take a hit. As people, basically what they've done, now that I think about it, is that they have scrapped their deal with Fight and just did everything that they were doing on Fight. They're not doing it with Warner Bros. Discovery. So proof of concept was Fight. They used to run Dynamite on Fight and you could watch it on Fight. And I think it was simultaneously on Fight, right? You could, and in the pay-per-views, you could always order those on Fight later for a discounted price. So they just did both of those things with Warner Bros. Discovery. That's pretty much all they did. So it's growth because they're on a bigger platform, which, kind of kicks Fight in the nuts, but it's the same setup, so it's okay, I guess. It's better than nothing, better than not getting renewed at all. So it's fine. Couple more notes before we get into the show. AEW is doing something with DC Comics. They're promoting these DC Comic pocketbooks, which are basically like manga volumes. That's actually a very good idea. If I didn't have the ones that I wanted already, like Watchmen, I would get those. They're very inexpensive too. So, that tickled my funny bone as a guy who is into comic books. But the variety isn't quite there yet. But it's a good proof of concept, and I know a lot of people are jumping on. So hopefully people start buying comic books. I like those. Apparently there's going to be some kind of integration between AEW and DC Comics, which lends some credence to them being a Warner Brothers Discovery property. Because why else would they be doing DC Comics with you? Anyway, ought to be very interesting. Another note, Sammy Guevara apparently got injured, and so did a female jabroni. Apparently she also got injured when Lady Frost fell on her. And I guess Sammy Guevara took a cutter bad, and that guy went from being a healthy scratch for months to now being a scratch. And apparently he got stretchered out, from my understanding. They dragged his ass on up out of there. That's no good. I gotta say, brother, that is no good. All right, so AEW is marching towards competition with NXT next week, which ought to be very, very interesting. We ought to see how that goes. But let's talk about AEW Dynamite first. So, Pac, Claudio, Moxley. They start the show with another one of those very inventive promos that I like very much, where Yuta is the first-person player in a video game, and Pac is talking to him, telling him it's time to choose sides. Says that you've always been a lion. Stop acting like you haven't already decided. Claudio is like, look, man, we already had big plans for you, me and Moxley. We're the same guys we've always have been. This is your home. Come home. And Moxley saying that he hoped that Danielson wouldn't have won the world title, because what he wants to do, what he's got to do, is win the world title. And then said that he's going to give Danielson a gift from the universe so that he can go out on his shield and that he can lose the championship in his hometown. He's going to be relieved from duty. He's going to send Daddy home for good. Later, Danielson says, John Moxley. And said that sentence has been going around in his head the whole night. And then we get to the main event. A ridiculous main event. Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson. Championship versus championship. Except the Continental Championship is only available for the first 20 minutes. Which guarantees that the match is going to go 20 minutes. Guarantees it, by the way. So you might as well just turn your brain off for the first 20 minutes. And since you know that the world title is on the line, then you know Okada's not winning. So we're just waiting for this match to end. Danielson wins with a backslide. It was fine. It was long, too long for my liking, as usual. But, it is what it is when it comes to AEW. After the match, well, for starters, I gotta tell about the finish. Pac comes up on the apron. It distracted Okada, and Danielson won with a backslide. So they did about 25 minutes of match, only for Okada to lose via backslide. Praise God, he kept his Continental crown, though, by the skin of his god darn teeth. Can you believe if Danielson would have won that thing? If you're going to throw away a championship match like this, it should have been at least a useful one. I guess Okada and Danielson is a big match, I guess. But once you already set up all these caveats to let me know that Okada is not going to lose his belt, then I already know Danielson's going to win, but he's not going to win Okada's belt. So I figured 21 minutes, 22 minutes is how long it was probably going to last, and it went a little bit longer than I thought. So after the match, of course, the BCC attack Danielson. Moxley says that this is not about him. He doesn't want to do this. If it was about him, he would have put Danielson in a casket a long time ago. And he says that he's the only one who can do this because he's the only one that will. And they're building it up like there's some kind of higher power at play. There's somebody else telling Moxley to do this, suggesting that Moxley do this. So they're playing into a higher power storyline. So Wheeler Yuta comes out there with a hammer, and it leans his whole arm back. I thought he was going to break his shoulder. Of course, the BCC flee from this guy with a hammer, because it's very important that we make Wheeler Yuta a star, and not any of the other guys we have on our roster that might be important, could possibly be charismatic and talented. Just Wheeler Yuta, because that's important to Tony Khan. $510 million, please. Anyway, he gets on the microphone and says that he's tired of Moxley and Claudio treating him like a child. He's a grown man. He can fight his own battles. And then challenge his own tag championship partners to a match next week, saying that Claudio and Pac versus him and Danielson in a tag team match next week. And of course, Tony Khan was like, that's a good idea. Immediately before the show goes off, the match is made. So Yuta's turning next week, right? I would imagine that's the plan. is that Yuta is going to turn next week and beat up Danielson. That kind of has to be the decision at this point. I don't see why you would do it any other way, but whatever. The higher power story, of course, is everybody's talking about Shane McMahon. Is Shane McMahon going to be the higher power in this circumstance? And you know what? It would be a good way to bring Shane McMahon in, but you have the question of why. If you have a strong why, then your story works. If you don't have a strong why, your story falls apart. There has to be a reason why especially if it's a conspiracy and guys are acting out of character, etc. There has to be a reason these things are occurring. Now, another thing about this Moxley storyline that people are talking about is ever since the Romper Stomper angle was suggested, because he said, this isn't your company anymore. Everybody's like, oh, they're skinheads. These are white supremacists and all this stuff. And I'm like, I never really bought into that. I never really bought into this being a white supremacist storyline. It's just Moxley was going bald, so he shaved his head bald. And Claudio's already been bald. He's been bald for a decade or more. And Pac is not even bald. So it's not like, all of these guys are skinheads. Only 2 of them have baldies. And there's nothing white supremacist about the angle or anything of that sort. They don't even take on any of the aesthetics of white supremacy or of skinhead culture or anything like that. There's just nothing playing into it. So I think people may have jumped to the conclusion that just because Moxley was bald and just because he stole a line from that movie, that this is what the storyline is. At the same time, though, if there is some kind of higher power that they're playing into, it could quite possibly be a sort of skinhead American History X kind of gimmick. But it depends, because the movie Romper Stomper was about, I think it was Australians, and they were fighting back against like the Vietnamese immigrants that was coming to Australia. And American History X was, Edward Norton, which was a superior movie, by the way. American History X was much better than Romper Stomper was. I'm not a person that is scared of skinheads or white supremacy, so I like reading stuff that they do, that they write. I like the movies that they make. It's an interesting subculture to me. So American History X was fantastic, and it, of course, delves into the white supremacist subculture. But it was also about, how hate changes a person, Of course, they kind of copped out at the end by having Edward Norton's dad be a white supremacist, and that's where he got it from. Spoilers for the movie that's like 20 years old now. But it was a good case study in the neo-Nazi subculture and where these ideas come from and how they behave. And Romper Stomper's similar. It's a much older movie than American History. It's probably a couple of years, actually. But I don't see enough of that in these storylines to say that it's inspired by Romper Stomper or American History X. I just don't see it. The guy's white and he's bald. Is every bald guy who's white a white supremacist? No. You must believe Stone Cold Steve Austin is a white supremacist then, And he's more than likely not. He's a cat daddy. So that's just kind of what he does. But I wasn't a big fan of Okada and Danielson, mainly because I knew from jump wasn't no title switch happening and Okada was going to lose. They just wasted everybody's time working through that thing. I will say this, though. I give AEW credit because they're actually creating stories throughout the show. So they started with, the BCC story, and they touched on it again later, but they didn't go too far. And then they had it at the end. So if you watch the entire show, you got the entire story for this week and how the story is developing this week. And the story is actually developing because now you've got Wheeler Yuta has made his decision, which is what they wanted him to do earlier in the night. But there's always that hint of, is this really his decision or is this a swerve? Because he didn't actually hit Moxley with the hammer when he had an opportunity to do so. He also didn't hit anybody with the hammer. He just kind of stared at them. So are they lulling Danielson into a false sense of security? We will have to see next week. All right, match 1, Ricochet versus Will Ospreay. The match ends twice. Both times unsatisfactory. First, they had to introduce some story, which I appreciated this. Don Callis was backstage. He wanted to talk to Will Ospreay, but Ospreay's on first. So Callis says, you know what? Me and Takeshita, we have to go anyway. So we'll talk to you afterwards. And you'll immediately know that Don Callis is about to cost this guy this match. Immediately, you know this. So it was just a matter of, let's wait and see what happens, whether it's going to be a DQ or whether it's going to be, one of these guys is going to cost Ospreay the title. So then Ricochet and Will Ospreay, they work the match. It's nostalgia, nonsense flips, kung fu fight scene. It's stuff that they always do. A Hurricane Rana off the barricade, which was actually an interesting spot. That was actually innovative. I thought that was pretty cool. And then we get to near the end of the match where they do poison Ranas to each other. Ricochet does one to Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay does one to Ricochet, or might even been the other way around. And then Will Ospreay hits the hidden blade and he falls where his shoulders are on the mat and Ricochet's shoulders are on the mat. And the referee counts them both and ends the match in a draw. The crowd was like, what? Everybody shit on this. Everybody hated it. They thought it was a terrible idea. I was like, okay. I knew something was up. I just knew there was going to be some shenanigans. They restart the match, and then Takeshita comes in and assaults Will Ospreay. So Will Ospreay wins by disqualification. So they worked the match that was actually fairly long. They did all kinds of intricate gymnastics. They did all kinds of flips where they landed on their feet. This is the only kind of match Will Ospreay can have. And then they ended it in disqualification. So they gave you nothing. You got a taste of what they can do. A very strategic disqualification. And one that probably is it deserved? It's earned, let's say. Because at least they teased it earlier. My only problem is disqualification is a completely legitimate finish. A disqualification is a legitimate finish. Just, I hate that it eats up so much time. These matches eat up a lot of time. And once you have dedicated 15 minutes or something to a match, you do want the match to have a solid ending and not some schmozz finish where, even though I like Takeshita and it's got a lot of heat on him, it's a schmozz finish. These guys are just generic brawling in the ring and then Takeshita walks away. Okay. He couldn't do that 10 minutes prior? I don't know. It was dumb. But those two matches were the only two interesting things on the show. Outside of maybe one more thing. Maybe one more thing is interesting. But that's kind of the top of the show is Danielson and Okada, which I wasn't really all that interested in because I really don't care about Okada. That match was thrown together at the last minute. And Ricochet and Will Ospreay, which of course is rushed and was never given the build that it should have gotten. So Mercedes is there. She is talking about herself as usual, and MVP gives her a business card. But MVP wasn't done for the night. Later on, he shows up, and Press Nana gets into his face and says, "You must have forgot I was a wrestler. I'll put these boots on right now." And MVP says, "Look, I don't handle complaints. He handles complaints." And the president of the complaint department is Shelton Benjamin. And look, I loves me some Shelton Benjamin. I had a smile on my face as soon as I saw him. I was like, hell yeah, Shelty. Get that job. Get that moolah. I love it. Even TNA didn't go this far. I don't think he ever worked for TNA. Pretty much everybody who worked for TNA ended up working in AEW eventually. But I don't think Shelton Benjamin ever made the TNA jump. I think he went to Japan at the time. So it's nice seeing Shelton on TV. Thumbs up. I love it. It's great. So Shelton Benjamin is here. So of course now we waiting on Lashley to show up. So they're still feuding with Prince Nana, and this is fine. I don't have a problem with this. Am I interested? Kind of interested in where this is going. But we already know what it is. But now they're going to get an opportunity to actually do stuff, as opposed to having their wings clipped a little early. Unfortunately, they have to deal with like the subpar talent in AEW. You know, instead of feuding like the Bloodline or something, they're gonna, I guess, act like the Elite don't exist. But Mercedes Benz in the group don't work. Just get one of the other black girls that's floating around in there. Maybe that Queen Laminata girl. The Guns got assaulted by Hangman Page as they was about to cut a promo, because they've been hanging out with Juice Robinson, and Juice Robinson and Hangman Page is going to work a match. And you talk about a match I didn't want to see. I had zero interest in Hangman Page versus Juice Robinson, two people I don't like. Juice Robinson is back, much to my chagrin. He got lynched, too, by the way. Is Juice Robinson mixed? Because if he's mixed and they had Hangman lynch him, we probably should have a conversation about that. But if he's not mixed, and instead he's just a white dude, he still got lynched on national television. But okay, fine. It's not a big deal. Because I always thought Juice Robinson was kind of racially ambiguous. You know, like he might have like a black grandparent or something. So I'm not a big fan of Hangman Page lynching a black dude on TV. Even if he's only like 25% black. But if he's like a white guy and he got lynched on TV, you know, they did that too back in the day. But I didn't care about this. I didn't give a shit about Hangman Page or Juicy Fruit Robinson, that bum ass bastard. His wife is on the other side of the world and he's here wrestling with his bum. Two bums in the ring looking at each other. How nice. Anyway, Juice Robinson, after he loses the match, he has to get kicked in the balls and hit with a buckshot lariat. And he's getting lynched, by the way. And then here comes Jay White. Huge pop for Jay White as he chases off Hangman Page. I was surprised at how big the reaction was for Jay White, because I didn't know that AEW's fans actually cared about Jay White. So this was very nice. Hopefully they use this momentum and keep him relevant on the show. Hangman Page versus Jay White as a feud. I believe we've been there, right? Didn't they fight for the world title or something? Oh, no, that was Adam Cole. Well, he might have wrestled Jay White too. I don't know. I don't remember. But it was a thing that occurred. Big pop for Jay White. Thumbs up. At least for Jay White's return, because he saved the guy who was literally being hung on national television. He gets a thumbs up for me. But I also will give him 4 thumbs down for saving Juice Robinson's life. Instead, he should have helped lynch Juice Robinson. Moving on. Chris Jericho came out there, wasted everybody's time, talking about this new TV deal, putting himself over, and then called out Mark Briscoe because he wants a world title match for the Ring of Honor world title. Mark Briscoe came out there, said a lot of words. His gums was flapping. I mean, just gums all over the place. I mean, mouth like a Dixie Chick song. Wide open spaces. Spitting all over the place, flopping all over the place, whatever. Next thing you know, Jericho says that Mark Briscoe can't beat him, but maybe Jay could. And I was like, whoa, that was stiff. Jericho's working stiff. And then, you know, Chris Jericho says that Mark will never be as good as Jay. So then, of course, Mark Briscoe pops Jericho. Jericho goes down. And Mark Briscoe actually chokes up. He choked up a little bit. Said, you know, keep my brother's name out your mouth. Accepted his challenge for the Wrestle Dream match. That match should go on the pre-show. This match should be on the pre-show. Oh my God, Jericho. Look, Jericho has worked. They say he's 34 years into the business. I've never seen Jericho with a serious injury. No serious surgeries. No serious concussions. Jericho is the ultimate Terminator. He is, you got to give him credit. When he said that, I was thinking like, man, what was the longest time I seen Jericho injured? And I think he got injured, which kind of killed their push in Smoky Mountain. I think he broke his wrist or his arm or something. But other than that, I can't think of any serious injuries Chris Jericho had that caused him to miss a significant amount of time. And that's like the Miz in a way. Where the Miz, despite the fact he got a concussion at WrestleMania, he had no serious injuries that left him out for like months at a time. So like Jericho is an Iron Man in that sense. But instead of taking that win and leaving and saying, man, look, I worked 30 years and never had a serious injury, and just walking off into the sunset, he's working well into his 50s and running the risk of having to do rehab or something like that in his 50s. That's crazy. One of these young girls over in the Performance Center said if she has to ever have to rehab an ACL tear again, she's going to retire. She's like 26. Jericho's like 30 years older than this girl. And he's like, hey, if I tear my first ACL, it'd be my first one. No, Jericho, you don't need to wrestle Mark Briscoe. You don't need the Ring of Honor World title. We don't need this to happen. We don't need this to occur. We don't need Mark Briscoe on pay-per-view. We don't. A lot of people are going to give them shit about using Jay in the story. I'm okay with it if Mark's okay with it. I know a lot of people kind of get look, wrestling is not real. This is not how Chris Jericho feels. When they did it, I think they did this with Charlotte's brother a couple of years ago in WWE, and this led to a big brouhaha about should you be using people's real dead siblings and stuff like this and storylines. And if they're my position is kind of the family has to be okay with it, and there's always going to be people in the family that are not okay with it. But the family member that's in the story has to be okay with it. So, of course, there was some discussion that when Paige and Charlotte did their thing, Charlotte wasn't 100% on board with that. And it was kind of a forced upon her. But that's what they say about everything anyway. Whenever something is awkward, it was forced. If it had went over like, $1 million, it wouldn't have been a big deal, right? But only when people are grown, like, oh, I don't like that. Then all of a sudden, oh, no, I was forced to do it. If it went over great, then, it was my idea completely, 100%. But in this situation, it got the desired reaction. People are mature enough to know that Jericho is actually putting Jay Briscoe over by saying maybe Jay could have beaten me and you will never be as good as Jay. So using Jay is fine. It's not like when they used Eddie Guerrero and said he was in hell. It's not the same thing. It's a different context. But I think as a general rule, people who are really dead, we probably should avoid that if we can. It feels dirty to use like people who are really dead. I don't like it. But I don't need Jericho versus Mark Briscoe. I don't need it at all. And I thought this was going to be like a Rampage main event or something. Instead, they're going to throw this on pay-per-view. Because they was just trying to throw matches on pay-per-views at this point. They didn't have any ideas. So they just like, on the pay-per-view, we're just going to throw this match on there. Okay. So the only other good thing on the show was Darby Allin. So he tells this story about daydreaming on the bus and guys spitting at the back of his head. Everything about Darby Allin means he's a goddamn loser. He's a perennial loser. Just a loser of the highest order. He's getting hit. He getting blasted in the back of his head with spitballs, and he turns around and the guy got a switchblade, and it's like, "What you gonna do, bitch? With your little pink coat, yeah, bitch." And he's talking about how he feels so bad because he can't stand up to himself. It's 3-on-1, and then he says, "Well, they kept doing it, so he decided he had to do something." So he got up, went back there, and confronted them. And then that's when he saw the knife, and he was like, well, I guess I'm getting stabbed. And I was like, what? pardon? I guess I'm getting stabbed. I was like, oh, you was dead serious about this shit, huh? You took this to heart. Those spitballs must have really hurt your feelings. Must have not been not anything like when you put that hot sauce in your ass. That was a joke. But the spitballs, oh my God, I'm willing to get stabbed over that. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But at least the promo was interesting. He was talking about why he decided to put his title shot on the line. When everybody on the internet and everybody in the world is calling him stupid for putting his title shot on the line, he's basically saying, Moxley, you wanted to bully me. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to stand up for myself. Even if that means I lose everything. Even if it means I have to get stabbed, I'm going to stand up for myself. And I honor that. I salute that. As somebody who's had guns pulled on him, like, hey, it happens. The worst thing that could happen is the motherfucker pull the trigger. The worst thing that could have happened to Darby Allin is he'd got stabbed. If he'd got beat up, it probably wouldn't have been the first time he got beat up. So I'm going to salute that he put his title shot on the line and lost it. And the story explains that. It doesn't make it smart. And he's even saying, like, it was not smart. It's a mistake. And, you know, usually people, you grow up, you learn that certain things aren't worth it. You be a little bit more conservative. The more you have to lose. But when you're a young man, you're willing to go out there and lay it all on the line. And he was willing to do that. He's a young man. Is he 30? He's like barely 30, right? So there'll be other championship matches for him. You know, so I got it. I understood the story completely. I loved it. I thought it was great. What I don't like is he decided, because he's pissed off at himself for losing to Jon Moxley, he's going to show up at Wrestle Dream and put out an open challenge. So he'll fight anybody at Wrestle Dream. And I'm saying, like, open challenge is not for no championship or nothing, just the right to fight Darby Allin. That's not a pay-per-view worthy match. I would imagine somebody's coming in or returning that's going to make this match worth it. And maybe it'll be Adam Cole or something to make this thing worth it. Other than that, I don't see this being a pay-per-view match. And Darby has to win this match, in my opinion. You know, if you go out there and start an open challenge, you should win it. So I don't necessarily like this idea, but they're going to go with it. So Cody Rhodes, I didn't read the article, but basically he says that Darby Allin has all of the tools to be the face of AEW, but he has to stop doing stupid shit. Basically, you know, if you want to be the face of AEW, you have to be dependable. You have to be the kind of guy that they can invest in. You can't be the kind of guy who is out here getting hit by buses. You're doing X Games shit where you could tear up your ankles and give yourself concussions, and you can't be going out and climbing mountains. And I'm surprised nobody responded to that. But that's good business advice from Cody to Darby, saying, look, you have all the tools to be the star of AEW, but you have to rein in, you know, some of your, I was about to say autism, but that's probably not even the right word. You know, your desire to self-harm and use other people as a mode of self-harm. You have to stop doing that, you know? And Darby Allin has always been a guy that he's tiny, super tiny, but he has potential. You know, he has that Jeff Hardy-like attachment with the audience. Everybody likes him. Even I like him, and I hate AEW. But Darby Allin works. He works for what the brand is. He represents the brand well. And I don't want him going out there doing dumb shit, tearing up his ankles and knees and destroying his body before he has a chance to make money here, you know, and help make the company some money. Because I think that of the four pillars that could actually make you money, MJF and Darby Allin are the only two. You ain't gonna make a dime with Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara only going to cost you money. And Jack Perry, my God, Jack Perry can come into the company with money and lose it all the first day. Like a casino, right? He just pulls the lever and money flies out of his pockets and Tony's. Jack Perry is a waste of fucking time. Now, speaking of Jack Perry. So Jackson Perry he shows up in his scapegoat bus. Nobody has fully explained why he has a bus. And why is he driving the bus? What is going on here? Who cares? I don't even care. And he's walking through the parking arena or parking spot. And the Japanese guy, what's his name? Shibata, the brain guy. Okay? The guy whose brain was put back in after it was taken out, according to Meltzer. He, on his little phone, says that he wants to challenge Jack Perry for the TNT title at Wrestle Dream. And Jackson Perry, because he's a tough guy, he just beat him up. This is supposed to be like a trained mixed martial artist / like Shibata is supposed to be like one of the most dangerous men walking around with hands and feet. And Jack Perry, who looks like the new version of the Crow, beat him up and just left him laying in trash. And then said, I accept your challenge. I'm like, oh, okay. So then Private Party beat up some jobbers. They beat them in record time. Isaiah Cassidy cut a promo, basically talked about how they want to be the new tag team champions. They beat the Young Bucks once, can beat them again, and say they want a tag team championship match right now. And I said, pause. Didn't you get your hand smashed by Jon Moxley? You don't want to do anything about Moxley breaking your hand? His hand is taped up, so at least they know that his hand is still hurt. And we're just going to ignore that Moxley smashed his hand? That's in the wind now. We don't care about that anymore. No questions asked. We just moving on. Okay. Anyway, Young Bucks come out. They put themselves over about AEW 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Then they accepted the challenge, but then backed out. They did the old, we'll fight you anywhere, but not Pittsburgh. Ugh. And then, Jack Perry beat up Private Party by himself. Just beat them both up. I'm like, what? So then the Young Bucks, they ran down there to help just to make it less ridiculous. But Jack Perry took both of them down by himself. And then Shibata came out there to save Private Party. And then Christopher Daniels came out there and made it a 6-man tag for Rampage, in a match I will never actually see because it's going to be on Rampage, and that show is dead. It's dead. Who cares? Who watches that shit? Shibata, Perry. I know what match to go to the bathroom on. And so do you. Britt Baker defeated Serena Deeb. I like Serena Deeb. I don't really care for Britt Baker. Whatever. Mariah May was watching this match from the crowd. And Deeb attacked Britt Baker after the match, which led to Queen Aminata making the save. Because apparently Aminata and Deeb are feuding. I don't know. So Britt Baker, who lost to Mercedes the last time we saw her, is now in the championship hunt again, but this time for the world title. How is that possible? How is that happening? And then Mariah May cut a promo a little bit later that blew the roof off this entire scenario, where she talked about Willow Nightingale. So she says Willow was failing upwards. And then she went through all this list of Willow's losses. And I was like, bro, I object. I object to Britt Baker being in this storyline. I object to Willow Nightingale being in this storyline. They're both losers. They both lose. Britt Baker just beat Serena Deeb. Okay, I guess. But Willow lost the last match I saw her in, which was to Chris Statlander. She just lost. Why is your world champion fighting people who are on losing streak? I don't know, man. Why are you booking that way? Both companies are doing it. Both AEW and WWE are doing it. This just goes to show that championship is lesser because you actually lose your way into it. You can lose a bunch of matches and get into it. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Mariah May cut a very good promo, and she made good sense. So I give a thumbs up to her. Christian Cage just showed his face. He's still calling himself the reigning, defending, future world champion, which, because he's playing it straight, actually works. It's very funny. But of course, we all know the most ridiculous thing of the entire night. Not Jack Perry beating up two black dudes by himself. Not Wheeler Yuta chasing people around with a hammer. Not guys doing poison ranas on each other and not selling them. Not, double pins or championship matches or title matches where only the first 20 minutes are for one title and then it's another. No. Hook cut a promo on this show. And it was really, really, really bad. It was so bad. They did a story before Dynamite that Taz was attacked in the parking lot. They showed no footage of this. No pictures. Because Taz is too tough. Taz still lives in the gimmick. It's 2024. Taz still think he's a tough guy. You can't wear orange. You can't, I don't know. It's like, if Taz is really about that business, he'd got beat up in the parking lot on the air by a hooded figure or something. But because it's Taz, he's talking about it through tweets. Oh, I was attacked in the parking lot. Somebody got me from behind. I didn't see him. I'm like, can we get a picture of you? You were beat up so bad you can't do your job, but you can tweet about it? Man, if you don't sit your ass. Taz. Okay. In any event, Hook is upset about this, as he should be, because his father was attacked. So we went through all the trouble of getting rid of the title because we want to make him his own man and he has to do his own thing. But his very first post-FTW title match, his first post-FTW storyline still involves Taz. And so he cuts this really bad promo. It's really bad. He says, when I find out who did this, I'm coming for you. And his acting is awful. There's no fire, and it's all cartoons. It's all cartoon shit. There's no real fire, no real passion. He's pacing back and forth and pulling out his old jailed hair. I'm like, man, get this. This is so bad. Oh, this is so bad. He needs to grow like a beard or something, man. Hook, grow a beard. Get a haircut, grow a beard. Put on some weight. This ain't working. You need to. He acts like a guy who has never watched wrestling before. That's really what bothers me. Is like, he's so bad. It's almost as if he never watched wrestling before. You know what? He reminds me a lot of Mark Merrow. Now, Mark Merrow, when he first came in, he was doing the Wild Man gimmick, and he was always outraged and turning around in circles and pulling at his hair and stuff. That's how Hook reminds me. Bug-eyed, voice cracking, like, it's so weird. It's so weird. Why? Watch wrestling, dog. Watch. Like, really all you have to do is watch wrestling. The acting is so bad. The promo is so bad. It was so cringe, bro. I almost died. I laughed so hard at this shit. I rewinded it and listened to it again. It was that bad. He's a very young guy, man. I'm trying to cut him some slack. But he is not good at this talking thing. He's just not. His aura was all in when he was silent. As soon as he started eating Doritos and shit, it was over with. It was over. And now we're doing a whodunit. We don't even get to see what it was, but we're doing a whodunit. Who attacked Taz? Do I really care who attacked Taz? No. This ain't Clue. It would have been nice if I got to see it. Because then I could, we could make, these suggestions, or we could talk about, who dresses like this, or the size of the attacker, and all this kind of stuff. But no, we don't even get none of that. It's like this is one of those things that's going to get solved on Rampage, and nobody's going to give a shit. It's going to end up being Serpentico or something like that. It's going to end up being Kip Sabian, you know? But who cares? Hook is just so bad at this that I don't even give a shit no more. But at the same time, he's funny. He's so bad, he's funny. He's so cringe, he's hilarious. But it's unfortunate. Very unfortunate that Hook is in this situation. Okie dokie. So that's Dynamite. So next week, Title Tuesday. They haven't decided what titles are going to be on the line because they pretty much put all the titles on the line over the last 2 weeks. But they're going to head up with NXT. Dynamite starts at 9. NXT would be on for an hour by the time Dynamite starts. So we know what time Randy Orton's going on next week. Randy Orton's theme song is going to play at 9 o'clock sharp next week. So Javon Evans versus Randy Orton will be at 9 o'clock sharp next week. Either that or CM Punk's theme is going to play, one or the other. Somebody from the main roster is going to show up at 9 o'clock on NXT. That's all I can tell you. It ain't going to be like Ethan Page or anything. So that ought to be a very interesting scenario. Okay, one last thing before we go. I saved this for last because I actually want to put aside how I feel about this particular person as a professional wrestler and talk about him basically as a person. So, Luchasaurus, Kill Switch, apparently he collapsed at his home and he ended up having double pneumonia and he's still in the hospital. And I want to wish him the best of luck. I may not be a big fan of his wrestling career. I may not be a fan of his wrestling persona. I may not be a fan of him writing snitch letters to WWE HR about Bill DeMott. But I don't want the guy to die. You know? I don't want the guy to be sick. I don't want that for his family. I don't want that for him. So, as we wrap this thing up, we're going to give one good prayers up for your boy Luchasaurus. So thanks everybody for stopping by. Prayers up to Luchasaurus. Peace out.
No one does it better.